Welcome to Energy Careers, a segment of the Energy Conversations podcast dedicated to exploring opportunities in the dynamic world of the energy sector.
Welcome to the Energy Careers segment, a segment of the Energy Conversations podcast. This is where we get into the real stories of the people in the energy space. What lessons have they learned along the way, and what really has shaped them? In today's episode, we get into the stories of Lisa Reynolds and Songo Didiza. Ladies, welcome to the podcast. To kick off, please can you share with us what you studied and what sparked your interest in the energy sector?
Thank you, Kanyo. So my first degree was a Bachelor of Economic Science degree that I studied at Wits University. And then my postgrad, which led me to the Green Buildings and Energy Conversation, was a postgraduate diploma in sustainable development and renewable energy. And subsequently, then been exposed to various aspects of entrepreneurship. And then where does one learn to be an entrepreneur other than being an entrepreneur? So yeah, and I've been one now for the past 10 years.
Interesting. And Lisa, can you tell us what you studied and where it all began?
Okay, but you please have respect for the gray hair and know when I started studying environmental studies, and that were not such a great thing, okay? So just put that in perspective. But I actually studied to become an industrial chemist of all things. But I worked through sort of different ranks. I worked through corporate, and I got to a company where we felt that to really fulfill everything, that we should change the face of South Africa in the regulatory sense. So back pre-2011, we had no energy efficiency standards for buildings, for new builds. And my sort of MD at the time said, go forth, go and get energy efficiency standards for buildings written and get a regulation in place. So I did this sort of advocacy journey. It wasn't really done at that time as well. It took 7 years of my time and effort and push. And we got energy efficiency regulations for buildings and energy efficiency standards for buildings written. And from that moment on, I went into the space, and it was my passion. And I went into water efficiency. I got involved in the Green Building Council. Just to put a bit in perspective, Songo and I were business partners at one time. Songo taught me my entrepreneurial spirit, because as I say, I was a real corporate animal before that. So I learned the master of entrepreneurship. And then the position for Green Building CEO came up, and it was a no-brainer. It's my passion, and it went there. So I think maybe the good message is that whatever you study, get a good background, but your path will take you where your path needs to take you, as long as you find opportunities and you seize them.
Nice to hear that you guys have worked together before and now you're both entrepreneurs. Oh, wow, that is so nice to hear, really. Would you say, seeing that both of you are entrepreneurs, do you think there was a specific moment that encouraged that? And were there any specific challenges that you encountered upon taking the decision to go into entrepreneurship, particularly in the green energy space?
Being in a corporate, people pay you for doing something that will give them a return. And I got to a stage where what I wanted to do and what I wanted to achieve, I couldn't do under another person. I had to sort of branch out and really follow my passion and make a business out of it. And we just happened to find each other crossing paths in the same space. And it was great. And I think to do what you want to do, it's not easy, it's quite tough. But to do what you want to do brings rewards, and you can really sort of get your own direction going. You can say, look, this is my passion. This is the way I want to go. This is where I want to make a difference. And that's, it's important. You don't have anybody else to report to. You're doing it for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So I like that we cross paths, because when I met Lisa, which is over many, many, many years ago, I was on the other side. I was working for a nonprofit that was promoting the development of the green economy. And then she became a mentor and told me, and basically mentored me into green buildings, learning about energy efficiency, the standards, how the standards writing policy works, the policy framework in the country. And yeah, so for a long time, we talk about peer review and learning and earning your stripes. I mean, as much as the back of my mind, I was thinking about becoming an entrepreneur, but in order to become an entrepreneur, I had to actually navigate, what are the real opportunities? What's the big opportunity? What's the addressable opportunity that I can actually tap into? And that a lot of that came through mentorship. So coming from the space and coming into the for-profit space, but really with a clear purpose in mind of having impact.
I like the idea of mentorship. I think so many of us don't really understand the impact of mentorship and how it can really contribute to really propelling one in their career. If you could go back and give your younger self one piece of advice in building a career in this space, what would it be?
I think start learning to start and actually not being scared to start where you are. I mean, when I started, sure, before I slept on a few couches, just having to navigate the entrepreneurial challenges, it's just being able to back myself and saying, hey, you can do this thing. But I think also, having a clear vision, I think it really helps in particularly grounding you and talking about grounding you towards your purpose. And then using that to really drive the driving force behind that purpose. And then obviously there's all these other softer stuff, I mean, having discipline, whether it's from waking up in the morning, going to the gym every day, or going for a walk, whatever the case may be, eating healthy. The same comes into business. You've got to be disciplined. And one of the first things I had to learn, humbly learned entrepreneurship was, hey, the business's money is not your money. It's the business's money. So all these things that you learn along the way, and that comes from all the softer stuff that we never talk about, that they never teach you in MBA school, having that discipline, having a good, healthy mental health mindset, surrounding yourself around the right people, because it's so easy to be, influenced, right? We live in a very influential world. And really having those ethical principles. I mean, we talk about ESG, for instance. The ESG really starts at home. Having that ethical social governance really starts at home, and that's the one self. So bringing all those softer elements with the more harder elements of, being able to run a business, financial acumen and things like that, but also balancing it with the knowledge you gain as you go along. I mean, when we did our first couple of projects, we were learning on the job, and that's how we became experts ultimately, by making those mistakes, but also ultimately learning to really back ourselves.
And Lisa, what would you say to your younger self?
I would say, don't be too hard on yourself if you make mistakes, because all are lessons learned. And I think also to understand where your passion lies and where you want to make a difference. I think you need to sort of say, set your boundaries. When you run your own business, you try not to say no to anybody, but sometimes you have to think, no, this is not in my wheelhouse, because you lose, your focus. You get like this sort of scattered approach. Then actually don't know where you're doing, and you're trying to do too much for different people. And I think it's really about saying, look, this is the parameters within where I work. Stick to that, And yeah, I think the big lesson to a lot of people is that no is an answer sometimes, and you have to say it. And to really be effective, you have to know, this is my space, this is where I can contribute, say no if you need to.
I think the key lessons that we can draw from both your journeys is not be afraid to start, but also to not be afraid to be a beginner. I think so many of us walk around thinking that we have to always have things figured out, and it's so unnecessary because everyone starts somewhere. But I think the next thing is just to follow your passion. The picture may not be clear, but as long as you follow your passion, something will come out. The picture will become clearer and clearer as you progress. And it can be very difficult saying no, especially if you're building a business, you're stuck between balancing paying the bills and focusing on purpose, right? So I can only imagine what tough lessons you've had to learn. I think what I want to know is, with the both of you, when you went into entrepreneurship, was it something that you knew you could go into and then decided to go into?
My mom, she always goes, yeah, what did I do to give birth to all these entrepreneurs? So it just so happens that I've got 3 siblings and all of us are entrepreneurs. And we probably started the entrepreneurial journey more or less around similar timelines. However, my sister had been an entrepreneur for a few years, and I'll be very honest with you. I always asked her, why are you doing this thing? And I just ended up in the same space. So that was not so much the template per se. I think it's maybe the familiar grounds. It's like, okay, well, she's also doing it. Then it's familiar grounds and it's camaraderie in a sense. But really more, not so much entrepreneurship, but more in resilience, really drawing on my mother, but definitely my grandmother. I am still astounded by the fact that my grandmother, not having gone to formal education, and she stopped school maybe in grade 5, but somehow gave birth to 10 children. And all of those 10 children went to university. I'm still, till this day, astounded in terms of how she achieved that. And then it really came through resilience, and I'll forever use that as a template to navigate the entrepreneurial space, because it can get challenging. There are times where you call your friends, hey, Lisa, might need a, but really it comes with its troughs and it comes with its crests, but certainly wouldn't change it for the world. But when it comes to a template in resilience, I always draw on my grandmother and her wisdom.
That is so amazing. There's a lot one can learn from resilience, right? And I think it's so profound that for you, it's your grandmother, it's not far. No, it wasn't outside, but it starts at home. And Lisa, what would you say? Was there a template for you? Or was it someone you knew who was an entrepreneur?
Well, I knew Songo, so that was and we, as I say, we're lucky that I think we brought different things. But what I would say about entrepreneurship is people must remember, I think Songo said it as well, is that it's a business. It is your business. You are your boss. But as a boss, you have to be responsible. So if I look at how I approached entrepreneurship, how I approached the Green Building Council, I treat it like a business. I had some good bosses in my sort of corporate days, and they would say to me, before you spend any money, think, if this were my business, would I spend that money on this? And I think, and that's also where the discipline comes in, is people think that being an entrepreneur, you can make a fortune, and you can, but unless you're disciplined with how you treat the business, put the work in, as an entrepreneur, in corporate, if somebody says, can I have this and this answer? Say, sure, you can have it by tomorrow. Entrepreneur, if somebody says, can I have this and this answer? If it's 11 o'clock at night, you'll make sure that when they open their email at 8 o'clock the next morning, your replies in their box, so it's that sort of bringing that kind of thing. As I say, just being aware, you fiscally aware. I think, even with Green Building Council, we're a not-for-profit, but I have to make sure that we generate enough revenue so that we can stand alone and stand independent. We don't rely on sponsorship. We do our thing because we have to be fiscally responsible. And then, when it comes in, sure, you can pay bonuses, you can pay yourself a bonus when you get that great job, but always make sure your cash flow is there and that you've got good business sense. So I think entrepreneurs, sometimes they think they don't have to be as logical and as business-minded as they really, really have to be.
I imagine that there's probably a lot that you learn from going from receiving a guaranteed salary every month and then having to now navigate not only your personal expenses, but even the people that work with you. Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing your stories with us. Really, really inspiring journeys. And I hope for our listeners, they got some valuable insights on some of the paths that they can take within the energy sector. If you're curious about energy and there's a certain energy path that you are curious about, we'd love to hear from you. Send us an email at info@energyconvos.com, and let's keep building spaces where young people's voices are amplified. Thank you so much, ladies, for sharing your story, and that marks the end of our episode.
Thank you for tuning into Energy Careers, where we explore the endless possibilities in the energy sector. Don't miss out on future episodes where we'll feature more inspiring journeys and insights on how to embark on your own energy career path. Subscribe now to the Energy Conversations podcast and unlock the door to exciting opportunities in the dynamic world of energy. Your journey begins here.